Okay, you're right.
Yeah, all right, yeah. So this is yet another one of our what do we call them? We call them In Good Company is the name Alana came up for it. That's just quite
Okay,
good.
nice. Yeah.
Um, and our tagline is what we lack in polish, we make up for in insight. And I think that is Holidaymaker is our business off to a T.
Well, it makes sense as you're sat there in your Premier Inn, doesn't it?
Thank you very much. Yeah, Premier.
Yeah.
Tell you what, I should have a membership or a season ticket or something.
Have
So
you not?
I
Oh,
don't
we've got the little Premier Inn cards. They're amazing.
business might have one. Yeah. I was in exactly this hotel 2 weeks ago. Like, anyway, I won't bore
I
you.
live in them. I live in them, but they you know what they serve a purpose. They're clean, they're comfy. What else can you ask for?
You don't get many holiday parks in the middle of Edinburgh. We got one now who is a client, but I never get a discount from them. They remain nameless, Alex. So we'll leave that. James, tell us a little bit about yourself. You've got a fascinating background as far as I'm concerned, but tell us a little bit about yourself, who you work for, and how we work together, and then we can kind of
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I've worked in it's always a tricky one because like I kind of look at holiday parks as quite granular when I say I've worked in holiday parks for this amount of time, but I've worked in travel, tourism all of my life since I was 16 years old. In terms of parks, I kind of landed on parks, and I'm sure we'll touch on that in a bit, but UK tourism, what must be. I was 26 and what am I now? Yes, the best part of 15 years worked for in this industry, you know.
Mm.
And now working for ParcVu powered by Booking Experts. Which for me is yeah, I love what I'm doing right now because it's always been about doing what's best for parks and like previously I also worked for Hoseasons.
Yeah.
Hoseasons, you know, I still look at as that kind of heartbeat of the industry, certainly in the UK. You know, they so much revolves around Hoseasons in terms of, you know, selling holidays. And I'm a geek at heart, so combining what I've learned from Hoseasons, what I've learned operationally on Park, and now bringing that together with tech, you know, and you know, for me, the best park management software. I know it's property management software, but I'm going to call it park management software that's out there. Yeah, it's great. Loving life.
Um, you've got a really interesting background, and I'll come back on that in a minute because your graphic design background really interests me because of my background. But let's get straight into it. With that 15 years experience, which is much more than I've got in the industry, although I'm a lot older than you, where it's kind of a pretty general question, really, but I like picking around the specifics. Where do you think the main challenges are going to come from to the park industry over the next couple of years? And how do you see them best being addressed by tech? We don't have to go. Give us one or two that you
Well,
think.
no, I think that it's a good question, and you know, I've said for the last 5 years of host seasons, and I'm still saying it today, that our industry is like 10, 15, even 20 years behind that of hotels.
Mm,
And it's like on the scale of it, it's a lot smaller. You know,
mm.
we talk about Premier Inn, there's you know 15 in every single small town now, you know, so they're just everywhere. But we are so far behind in terms of technology, and actually, like, first of all, I think Bex completely closes that gap. Sorry, just to clarify, when I say Bex, it's Booking Experts. That's our abbreviation for it. Um, but it's not keeping with the times, and actually, a lot of the time, it's not listening to your guest.
Mm,
What's important for the guest?
mm.
That's ultimately what everything comes down to, because every single person who works in this industry, their sole aim should be delighting guests,
Yeah.
because
Which is, yeah.
without that we don't have an industry. And like, so it's making sure that that guest booking process is as smooth and easy as possible, making sure that that guest communication is as smooth and consistent as possible. You know, that for me, I think, is where parks are probably faltering slightly at the moment. You know, the amount of time, and I do spend a huge amount of time on websites, with varying different platforms that parks are using. And my biggest bugbear is that whirring wheel. You know, as soon as I'm going for a search or I search for a holiday and I see that whirring wheel, I can just I feel myself thinking, well, come on, hold on. And even bigger than that, the biggest lost opportunity for me
Mhm.
is no availability.
Mm,
Not We haven't got any availability. However, what we have got is this.
yeah,
Is if we look at the what I call the Centre Parks model, which is Monday, Friday, Friday, Monday, Friday, Friday, Monday, Monday. All right,
yeah,
still fairly established in the UK, still widely used.
mm,
If a guest doesn't understand that model and they want to go Wednesday to Wednesday, so many times they'll search for that and it will say, sorry, no availability. What it should say is, sorry, no availability. However, if you come 2 days later, we've
yeah,
got availability on this date.
yeah,
So there's a lot of that which I think parks are failing with. But yeah, it's all about customer journey, making that customer journey as easy and quick as possible.
Do you see that being a challenge going forward? Because one thing I've noticed, I mean, I've been in software 30, digital 30 years, parks 5, 4, 5.
Mm,
One thing I've noticed from outside the market is um, in, you talked about flexibility, but Airbnb, as an example, right? I can go whenever I want. I can go for 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights, 20 nights. And so do you think that um, experience, that learning, that Airbnb are kind of, in effect, I believe Airbnb are educating, are training
yeah.
consumers, hospitality, consumers of hospitality space, because they're going, you can have whenever you want, wherever you want, however you want it. And how you say hotels are responding to that?
Yeah, well, like flexi stays are massive.
Mm.
Like just a stat that I know previously, I think something like 6 years ago, the average stay was about 5 nights.
No.
Okay. When I left Hoseasons, the average stay was in the threes.
Okay,
I don't know
right.
what
So
that
coming
exact
down.
stat is,
Mm.
but what we know is people are holiday snacking now a lot more.
Good phrase. I've never heard that. It's
So
good.
they're rather than sort of committing to a week, they'll do 2 or 3 nights here or even a night there. So you're right, that whole flexibility is so key. And with the cost of living crisis, everything else, travel times significantly reduced
Mm.
because and it's places like Cornwall have had a bit more of a hit than that because Cornwall's not served by a major city.
Mm.
The closest major city is Exeter. I wouldn't, Exeter's an amazing city, but it's not a major city. It's not a major hub like Birmingham, London, Manchester, etc.
Mm.
Everything like that, you do have to consider travel time and everything else. But holiday snacking's a big thing. With Airbnb, for me, it's a case of if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the key things about Booking Experts is because we've got the open API, because we've got the App Store. We're never going to be an agent. We're never going to compete with like Booking.com, Airbnb, Verbo, etc. But we want to facilitate a partnership so anyone who's with Booking Experts can go into our App Store, click a button, and connect their Airbnb account. Everything pushes over. So we're just about making it as easy for the owner of the park as it is for the guest, because some people won't veer away from Airbnb because they've got their account, they've got a really strong reputation, and this is the world we're in now. You were same with Uber.
Mm.
You can see what your
Yeah.
driver is going to be like, and you can get recommendations in case you're rude to the driver. You can, this is the digital world, and actually, people really like being within that one infrastructure, that one kind of ecosystem of Airbnb. Like, this is my account, this is where I like to book, even if I can find it £20 cheaper somewhere else. I like booking there. So, and that's okay. That's, this is us listening to customers and consumers.
Can I ask a question then? Again, this is my naivety about park management and that kind of stuff, and you've been that side. In my history, if I was offering a solution to a potential client, my competition was another software solution or something else.
Hmm.
What's been a real eye opener for me in the park sector is that's not the case. My competition could be a hot tub manufacturer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a maintenance system. It could be a new bar area or retarmacking a road. Do you think with that holiday snacking, as you said, that's going to increase costs, right? More cleaners, more maintenance, all that kind of stuff. So is there as a software provider and are you kind of going, are you having to not even change it? Are you having to articulate more clearly? Okay, if your costs of cleaning, as an example, are going up because you've got people staying 1 or 2 nights, we can save you.
But that's not even a question for me in my current role. You know, like if you sell a short break,
Mm,
you'll generally make between 65 and 75% of the weekly stay.
okay.
So if you look at a 7 night stay, let's say that 7 night stay is £1,000.
Yeah.
A Monday to Friday, for example, we'll keep it short, sweet. That's probably going out at, I don't know, 650, and your weekend's probably doing the same.
Mm,
So, albeit you've got an extra clean coming in, you've got extra hot tub change, etc.
yeah.
You're making, 30% extra on that week. So, and actually parks like that, that's not the problem. I think where it becomes a bit more of an issue from
Mm,
a park side of things is if they're just sticking to that Monday, Friday changeovers, they know when their team members have to be there.
mm,
If they start, allowing Wednesday arrivals, Thursday departures, etc., that's a case of right, we now need teams around the clock and how they manage it. But
yeah.
that's kind of where Bex can help a lot more because like we've got a job management system built into the system where every single one of the cleaning teams, or even if you're using like an outside contractor to do your cleaning, they have access, they have view of every single day how many cleans they're going to have to do up to 6 weeks, 7 weeks, a year in advance. So managing that time, managing that those team members becomes easier because you're not going to find yourself overstaffed with only 3 units to clean. Equally, you're not going to find yourself understaffed with 30 units to clean and 3 members of staff. So that's kind of the idea behind it and where it can help parks from that side of things. But it is a concern. I've
Mm,
spoken to so many parks over the years that we've kind of like encouraged them to look at that more flexible break because and even do you know what, mate? Even so many parks are still no 7 days, Saturday to Saturday. That's all we offer, and like
yeah.
those are the ones you really have to go. You're losing people.
Despite the change in customer behavior.
Yeah,
On that customer behavior, how do you see our digital behavior changing? How with your again with your kind of software head on, and not even that, your part head
yeah.
on, how do you see people guests digital behavior changing, and how what in that last couple of
But I
years?
think that like I kind of pulled out a stat in our industry. Now, when I say our industry, I couldn't be as granular just to say parks, but in our
Mm,
industry in travel,
yeah.
the abandonment rate is 81%. So 81% of the time,
Mhm.
someone will get to a website, put something in a basket, and then go.
Do you know what? That is incredibly low.
Do you think?
In my experience of retail media, um, anything away from that, this is where my naivety comes in handy, being in other sectors. 81%. If you said to any retailer, you're going to have an
Yeah.
81% drop off, they'd snap your hands off. Unless you're Amazon, of course, or something. Even Amazon.
Well, no, but Amazon's is incredibly high. And I might have to recheck my data now that
No,
you.
no, no. I think you're right, but I think what's interesting there is that I think we're agreeing, right? I think that 81 is a lot, and I think when you take into account it's a considered purchase, right?
Yeah.
You're making a big purchase. 81% is a lot, right? When you're a little
But
bit,
that's to the point of a basket as well, because the amount of people who go on that website and are kind of still, that's you put your details in, and 81% of the time they still don't do it. So you've put all your name and stuff. That's kind of the point where they're dropping off.
and it's a considered purchase, mate. You're absolutely right. If I was to look at this, the stuff I've done in the past with Amazon and all that kind of stuff is, I shouldn't really say this, but the rule of thumb was with some of the bigger platforms was, um, Friday night, they've had a few drinks, 9:30 at night. That's why they set up
Yeah.
complete forms and usual details because they wanted to get people through quicker and do those purchases that they woke up on a Saturday morning going, what the hell?
Yeah. Why did I just do that?
Right.
Yeah.
They're unconsidered. They're like, oh, I'll buy a pair of trainers or I'll buy a t-shirt or I'll buy a
Yeah.
something. But you're right, 81% is extremely high for when you put your details in.
When you look at, yeah, and I guess the big question that I'm asking a lot of parts right now is what do you do with those 81%?
Mm,
And I would probably say 75% of them saying, well, nothing. There's nothing we
Mm,
can do.
mm.
So the first thing, and we're all doing it in everything. You don't go on Amazon now and leave something in your basket and not get five reminders to say,
Yeah.
that Dyson vacuum. Do you still want it? Because it's still sat there. And even better than that, half of the time they'll go, well, what about if we've got a better deal today? It's on the lowest price in 30 days. Um, that's one thing that can facilitate is to work in the modern world. And that customer is going to get that reminder, or even better, those receptionists who are sat on their hands of an afternoon, you now have that data to go, right, they were on the website earlier today, let's just give them a call. And we're not talking pushy sales. It's they might just not know where they're at. They might just want some information. You might just be going, we noticed you on the website earlier, is there anything we can do to help you? So it's kind of giving that Uber service and reaching out to them rather than, oh, hold on a second,
Mm,
they're trying to push me into book here.
mm,
The other thing is guest communication. Now, like we work with, like in our app store, we've got a business called Runner AI. We've
mhm.
got another one called Guest Butler. I know that you guys work closely with Hey Guest. We're pretty desperate to get them into our app store as well.
Yep.
But for me, what's happening there is mind blowing. And every single conversation I have with a chatbot or anything online these days, I'm questioning whether I'm talking to a person or whether I'm talking to AI.
Oh, crikey, you're talking about my speech before yours in XP in a couple of weeks. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but
You're right.
it kind of
Uh,
begs the question: does it
You're right.
matter if the information that you receive is good, is accurate? I don't really care whether I'm talking to a robot or a human.
Yeah.
And but that's where it's going. There's like again some of the technology they're using on the continent on parks.
Mhm.
A guest
Yeah,
can say,
talk about
oh
that. I'm interested. Yeah. What
yeah.
kind of thing have you seen there?
Well, I'll talk specifically about Runner AI because I've had a couple of good demos with their team, and I love what they're doing. And again, we're using them on quite a lot of the parks that we've got in Europe, and I think actually a park over here is also signed up to use them.
Mhm.
But a guest can, first of all, a guest can communicate by whatever way that they want to. Now, that could be through booking.com, if they've booked through booking.com, obviously, could be through WhatsApp, could be through text message, could be through email. And that's all going to come into one unified inbox through Runner AI. Okay, now we've also got that integration into our unified inbox as well. So it's just completely smooth. So guest says, oh, just want to know what time I can check in tomorrow. And then the Runner AI system will read into Booking Experts. Okay, I can see that it's a 2 o'clock check-in. What I might do also is just tell them what unit they're in and ask if there's anything else we can do. Would you like a bottle of champagne on arrival? And this is all set by the park. And then all of a sudden you start getting into a conversation with the guest. So the guest is saying, "Oh, that's great. I didn't know what unit I was in. Great news." It might even say that, if it looks like there's an early check-in available, so it's upselling on your behalf. And it's just incredible. And because it's AI, that person could even get into that conversation about, oh, are there any road closures en route? No, not at the moment. Roads look clear, or if there is, oh yeah, I'd avoid this road. It's just amazing, and it's scary.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We're talking to them, and because we've got the data from our clients' websites and all the other places we get data, Met Office and all this kind of stuff that we put into Holidaymaker, we're speaking to them about seeing what we could do together as well. So it's really interesting that. Let's talk about that a little bit more, AI. How do you think, and I mean, who knows really, but how do you think the way we interact with AI as individuals, forget about the business as individuals,
Mm.
how do you think that's going to change and that's going to develop over the next couple of years in terms of the parks?
Um,
Mhm.
it's a good question, and like you can only talk from your own personal. I don't think parks. It is a bit of a dated industry in a way, and we're trying to modernize it. We're trying to bring it forward, and that's why we're having conversations with parks. It's why Holidaymaker are having conversations with parks, is because of the fact that we've got the technology to move these businesses along.
Mm.
Um, I think it's going to be a really like the rate in what let's just look at ChatGPT because it's the most commonly used. The rate in which that has come from the first time I was using it, I would use it to help me write a property description for a holiday park. So I put all of the information in. It would just write it out for me nicely, and there were still quite a few mistakes to the point where now my whole day is kind of dictating to chat. Like I'll go, right, I've got this email from so and so. I want to write this reply. These are the bits I want to include in it, and it's learning about us. So at
Mm.
the same time as it's learning about its user with your account, it's going to be learning about the parks. And even just in the last 3 months, I've noticed that I can ask it for information about certain subjects that 3 months ago it would have struggled with. So the rate in which this like AI is developing is really scary. How it's going to other than the guest communication, the guest journey, everything like that, how else it's going to affect parks? I'm unsure
Mm.
because I'm probably not educated enough to answer that question.
I think that's why we get on because anyone who says they know in the bigger picture is lying. I was at a last time I was up here, I was at again, like I said to you last time we spoke, mistaken identity. I got asked to be as
Yeah.
part of this thing, and there was a venture capitalist there from the States, and he said if anyone tells you what they think is going to happen over the next 2 years with AI, they're lying.
Mm,
Even from OpenAI or anyone like that. But he did say, he said there are some fundamental facts. 75% of the global workforce by 2030 will be Gen Z,
mm.
grown up, they're digital natives. 50% of the UK travel bookings will be made by Gen Z in 3 years' time, 4 years' time.
Yeah.
They're used to it. So it's kind of like the way I'm starting to think about it now is it's not so much what the tech can do, it's what these guys are doing with the tech. It's
Yeah.
what if and I know parks will go, well, we're aimed at the older market, we're aimed at this kind of stuff. Well, okay, but 75% of the workforce is Gen Z and half of the bookers are Gen Z. They're going to start, that's only going to go one way. They're going to start.
Mate, I used to say it all the time on parks, and it was always quite a hard one to a message to say. I said, what percentage of your customers are repeat bookers? And if we look at the Southwest, a lot of the time they're really proud of their 60-70%
Yeah.
repeat business, and then you'd kind of have to just remind them that generations die. And where Hoseasons used to be good for parks, or still is good for parks, is it's finding new guests for you to
Yeah.
turn into
Yeah.
repeat bookers for years and years to come. And even now, and just going back to the AI question, whenever I go onto a park website and it kind of looks dated or the descriptions are poor, I'm thinking you don't even know what's capable because you could just literally just go, right, this is my website. Tell me what I need to do.
Yeah. Tell me what I need to.
Boom. And in the space of 2 hours, you could complete. I built a website, but the our demo website, ParcVu Holidays, I built it all on our CMS, on our content management system, but it's all AI imagery.
Mm.
It's all AI descriptions. ParkVu Holidays. We had, and this is no word of a lie, that I'm really proud of the website that we built because it was one of the first things I did when I joined the business because we were demoing on a Dutch site, which wasn't reflective of our, what a UK park looks like. Um, but I think it was about 6 weeks ago. The office received a call from a playground equipment provider asking us whether we needed any playground equipment for ParkVu Holidays.
Right.
And I'm thinking,
Uh,
wow, okay, well, it's obviously a good enough website to fool someone into wanting to sell us some playground equipment. We didn't order anything.
I'd love to see you or Andy Cressy
We're
sort
just
of
sat in
down.
an office on a swing, yeah, and yeah.
I'd
Um,
pay
but
good money for that.
but it was completely built with, I didn't and if it wasn't for AI building a full dummy website which looked accurate, which looked appealing, which looks like something you want to present, would have probably taken 3 or 4 days, and that's all manual content that you're kind of making up. Whereas AI's just got the imagination to go,
Mm.
okay, yeah, I get where you're going with this. I'll do that. Bang. Uh,
It's definitely leveling the playing field in terms of what parks can do. And I wonder, I mean, again, when I was at this thing a couple of weeks ago, it was the day after Marriott had announced that they are opening up their entire book, all their accommodation across all their brands to Gemini. So they're letting Gemini go straight in and,
yeah,
in a way, circumnavigate the OTAs. And at first glance, you think, well, that's good. All the parks can do that. All parks, it doesn't matter how big, whether you're Marriott or whether you're ParkVu Holidays, right?
yeah,
You can open up your book to a chat engine.
yeah,
And you think, okay, that democratizes visibility, but of course it doesn't, because ChatGPT are starting to do ads. Your results, if you search for a hotel in Berlin, you could have the best boutique hotel in Berlin, but Marriott will get shown first. Um, so there's that kind of thing. But you're right. I think that kind of balance between using it smartly to give yourself the best opportunity to be as good as you can be. It's kind of that
yeah.
slightly banky high performance thing, isn't it? Be the best version of yourself. And I think using AI to be the best version of your business, I think is probably a sensible way to
I
go.
mean, the XP event that I was at in Dorset, I can't remember who it was who said something, but there was something that he said that really. So I might even been, I don't know whether it was you, Dave.
It.
Someone said, "Let AI do the job for you,"
Yeah.
and that kind of and I thought, well, yeah, I'm kind of doing that already, and I'm not embarrassed about that.
No.
But that's kind of what it's about. It's
Pure system. I'm more convinced than ever. More convinced than ever. I'm doing a lot more work around it. That if you're a park owner or you're in marketing in a park or whatever, you can get a tool. And the way the light bulb for me went off 6 7 months ago, probably earlier, but I never really could articulate it, was when um it was kind of said to me, look, it's not a product. AI is not a product, right? It's a feature of multiple products. Make it a feature of what
yeah,
you do. So it's hidden away. Chat GPT is a product. That's not AI,
yeah,
it's a product. So make it understand that it's a product. It's a feature, not a product. And I was like, got it. And if you look at yourself as a product, or you look at yourself as a, just make it part of what you do. So
yeah.
anyway, that's me rambling on. No, that was my dear and old friend, although he wouldn't like to be called old Lawrence. Um,
That's right with Eve, yeah.
yeah, he's Eve, and he'll be back in Dorset as well. He
Oh,
can't.
good.
Eve will probably have developed into something even more
Well,
extravagant.
I've got an Eve in my car now. Now that Grok has appeared
Ah,
over into the UK, into Teslas, and yeah, anyone who does have a Tesla and hasn't used Grok, try Unhinged because it is absolutely disgusting. It's the one of the.
for you and your
Honestly, my jaw hit the floor when I turned Unhinged mode on, and it started going off. It's far too disgusting for a
the
nice
must.
podcast like this. But
Yeah, that's what you get from me, the must. We're all lunacy. So we've touched on a couple of things, but just to wrap up, if I was to say to you, okay, three kind of um in the broadest sense of the word, three digital kind of approaches or kind of things to do that you would advise a park to kind of look into. We talked about the journey, we talked about AI, we talked about kind of visibility and all that kind of stuff. But with all your multiple experiences on, if you were to say, right, these are two or three things I think you should look at. And here's how we, apart from buying Bex, James, which I know you're going to get in there first before you.
that's it then. That's it. I'm
Okay.
out.
Then what would you say if you were kind of thinking, if you were an owner or GM of a park, what would you be kind of looking from a tech perspective?
Oh, I like for me, and this is a message that I say, like it's kind of allowing tech to do the jobs that you don't want to.
Sure.
There's so much automation within our system, and there's automation within other systems as well. There's automation that you guys provide, which is just absolutely first class. But this isn't about replacing people.
Mm.
This is about replacing people's time to delight guests.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the attitude that I've always had with it, because there's so many times, and I remember like, wow, this is just done someone's job.
Mm.
So it's a case of, well, what can that person do now? It can free up. It can be on park. It can be talking to guests. It can be, that for me is where technology should be used. Um, and that's it. Like it's the automation within systems. It's and I guess it's listening to
Mm.
guests,
Mm.
and looking at these trends at the moment. Like reviews now are just massive.
Mm.
They are the backbone of any guest search. Is well, I need to see what everyone else says.
Mm.
And that's why we've got our own review platform based on the unit, not necessarily the park, because you can
Nice.
go on
Yeah.
TripAdvisor and you
Yes.
can get a review for the park,
Mm.
but you won't be able to get a review for, the Oak Lodge or the Cedar Lodge or the Gold Caravan.
Mm.
But that's kind of what people want. They want to know exactly what that was like. This is and obviously move with the times.
Mm.
This is the other thing. Like I use an analogy in my presentations quite frequently, which is the Nokia 3310. It may come up again in a couple of weeks' time.
Give people warning.
Thing is we've all got such fond memories, particularly of the Nokia 3310. If you're of a certain age, I
Hmm.
always forget that I'm not in that young bracket anymore. But if you're of a certain age and you had a 3310, it was built like a tank. Battery lasted 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And it was a great phone, but why aren't we using them now? It's because technology's evolved. And the question I keep asking Parks is why haven't you evolved? You've evolved what the technology that's in your pocket,
Mm.
which is running your day to day now. You receive your emails, you can turn your lights on at home, you can do everything.
Yeah.
Why are you still allowing your park to be run by fairly antiquated kind of software?
Yeah.
Because actually, PMS software out there can do exactly what your phone is doing for your life,
Mm.
for your park.
Yeah.
And it really isn't a big sell. Like with us, none of us, Andy, Marlon, Craig, myself, we're all consultative. We don't do heavy sales. It's okay. We want to come in and we want to show you as much as we can about our system and why we think it's really good for your park in particular. And at the end of it, if it's no good, that's fine. That's fine.
I think,
There are some other really good systems out there, and that's okay too.
I liken the park sector sometimes to the finance sector.
Okay, I've never done that.
Mm. The finance sector is still run on systems from 40 years ago because it
Right.
could be longer, 50 years ago, because it's you can't, imagine ripping out Lloyd's, Barclays,
Yeah.
infrastructures that have been used, that billions and billions and billions of pounds a second are being transacted upon. You'd be nuts. So you just bolt stuff onto it, and that's your Nokia kind of analogy. You're just bolting stuff onto it. The difference that parks have got is, although it's incredibly important, it's not maintaining the national economy or the international economy. So you can, I always say with us, you just take off little bits. So you said your
Yeah.
customer journey. Look at your customer. This is one thing that I learned the hard way when I was working in media. We put a system in when we didn't really fully understand the customer journey, right? But if you understand the customer journey, you can see where there's pinch points, fix them first, and pick the right solution for those particular pinch points, right? Then just fill in the gaps. And eventually, and there might be one system that does everything, there might be 10 systems that do everything. But if you can get those pinch points right, it's a pain in the backside because I can't automatically check my guest book.
Yeah.
So,
And that's what we're about, though. Like we've got the open API, and like our open API is probably more commonly known as our App Store. And like the Dutch, I know that you've worked a little bit with us, but the Dutch are quite direct people,
I've got grey hair, mate. What's up?
and
Yeah.
but they're great though because they're just no, not possible.
Mm.
They're quite happy to say no. And at first that was almost a bit uncomfortable because we're normally no with a little bit of rationale behind it.
Yeah.
No, but what we could, but the Dutch are no.
Yeah.
and that's it.
Mm.
But they are also like Bex are very much stay in your lane, do what you do best, and then work with best in class,
Mm.
which is why we work with Holidaymaker. You
Yeah.
know, I genuinely believe that you guys have got the best app for holiday parks on the market. And
Yeah.
it also helps that you guys have also got an amazing development team that can kind of maybe sometimes fill holes that we can't if a part's got a particularly bespoke requirement.
But I'm not going to show the tech team this after you've been nice. I'm not going to show the tech team this after you've been nice to them.
Oh, they're a clever bunch.
You're right.
Yeah. And then, and that kind of goes right out for everything. You know, we're never going to compete with a booking.com, so we'll
Mm.
connect with them. We're never
Yeah.
going to compete with Airbnb in terms of, exposure maybe, but we'll connect with them. Same with Hoseasons, we'll do that direct connection. And then you look at ANPR barriers. We've got no interest in becoming a company that develops their own ANPR barrier software, which does it. So we'll just connect with CloudPass, for example, who are just going to put their device in, and then it's going to send the registration details to the bollard from our system. Bollard lifts up when guest arrives. This is all the automation we're talking about. So, it's kind of rather than being that all-in-one system. And again, I don't want to ruin my presentation, but if we look at that an all-in-one system to me is that round the world buffet.
Yeah.
You'll get 800 dishes and they'll be okay, rather than going to an absolutely incredible Italian, which focuses on 5 dishes, but those 5 dishes are going to be absolutely kick ass. And that's kind of the way the way my brain works. And I'm thinking, well, that's actually makes sense. I'd much prefer to go if it was me and my wife, I'd much prefer to go to the really world class Italian than I would the round the world buffet, just because of the fact it's going to give me everything. If I was going with my kids, I'd probably still go with the round the world buffet because they would eat anything.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah,
analogy. Yeah, that's a really nice analogy. That's a good way to finish it. We didn't talk about your graphic design, so we're gonna have to do another one of these.